CJ Mosley retired today, but it's now coming out that there was some mutual interest between Baltimore and Mosley before the retirement. We'll dive into those details. We'll take a look at some other free agent options still out there. And I also wanted to highlight the incredible offseason that Eric DeCosta's had and the ability to find value in free agency. All that and more in today's episode of the Flock Rundown.
Ravens Flock. Flock Rundown is the place to be.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. So CJ Mosley officially retired today. Congrats to CJ. But it's now coming out that Mosley and Baltimore had mutual interest, and he was interested in returning to Baltimore to win and chase a championship. But unfortunately, he couldn't get cleared with his neck injury. There's been a lot of buzz for the past month or so about CJ Mosley potentially returning to the Ravens, and it sounds like there was mutual interest. I didn't know if Baltimore would be interested. I definitely was interested from a fan perspective, but I didn't know exactly how CJ Mosley would fit. But there obviously was some interest, and that goes to show that maybe the Ravens aren't fully confident in their entire inside linebacker room. You know, I know they obviously got Roquan Smith, and he's cemented in there as he should be, but there is an unknown with Trenton Simpson. You know, I'm expecting Trenton Simpson to be the starter this year. I expect him to be way better than he was last year, but there is risk there. I would say that that's one of the thinner positions on this roster. We talked yesterday about how stacked this roster is. I am not by any means saying that we need anything else, but if you do want to really nitpick the roster, inside linebacker would be one of those positions, especially the depth there. You know, we just got Teddy Buchanan. We got Jake Hummel as well in free agency, and then Trenton Simpson. But it's a lot of unknowns. You know, there's no surefire guy there that's like 100% going to work out. We don't have Patrick Queen there anymore. But Patrick Queen struggled for a few years as well. You know, his first few years in Baltimore, people were looking at him like they are Trenton Simpson a little bit, but even worse because Patrick Queen was a first-round pick. You know, but there were so many people calling him a bust. And then as the years went, he got better and better. When Roquan got here, Patrick Queen went to a all-pro level. So I definitely think Trenton Simpson has a lot more upside that he hasn't reached yet, that he definitely could hit this year. I am confident that he can do good enough, but I wouldn't be against adding a vet at that position, because if Trenton Simpson struggles with a lot of the things that he struggled with last year and he can't consistently be out there, and maybe Teddy Buchanan is not ready either. He's a rookie. You know, that's a lot of responsibility to just say like Teddy Buchanan is going to start year one next to Roquan Smith. I think that's highly unlikely, and that's no disrespect to Teddy Buchanan. I think he has a great future in Baltimore, and I'm excited to see, you know, what he can bring to the Ravens this year. I think he'll be more of a special teams guy and a depth linebacker, but I do think that he has potential to push, you know, for starting minutes later, but year one. So a veteran linebacker does make sense, and it sounds like the Ravens also think that way. If they were mutually interested in CJ Mosley, then they were okay with bringing him on board, which would have been cool, man. I know it's not the perfect fit, but I would have loved seeing CJ Mosley finish his career back in Baltimore. I love CJ Mosley when he was here, and that would have been a cool story, but unfortunately, sounds like he's not cleared to play football with that neck injury, so he officially retired today. So just wishing CJ Mosley and his family the best moving forward, and I'm sure he'll enjoy his non-football years too, man. He's still young. We always forget sometimes, you know, when players get old and retire, it sounds like they're like really old, but they're like usually in their 30s, man. That's not old at all. You know, you have a long life ahead of you, so I'm sure he'll dive into a bunch of other adventures and just enjoy retirement. But appreciate your time here in Baltimore, man. Wishing you the best. Moving on to the next topic I wanted to talk about. I really just wanted to show some love to the offseason moves that Eric DeCosta made. You know, ignoring the draft, I think he knocked the draft out of the park as well, but this is strictly just the free agents that were brought in, the value that the free agents were brought in at, and also re-signing or extending some of our own guys. I think Eric DeCosta had one of his best off seasons that he's ever had as a GM. He pretty much filled every hole that we needed. We lost a lot on special teams. He goes and brings in a special teams ace in Jake Hummel. We needed some cornerback depth. He signs Awuzie at a minimum deal. He goes out and then signs Jair Alexander yesterday for $4 million up to $6 million. Michael Pierce retires. We need some more D-tackle depth. He goes out and gets John Jenkins for cheap. We lost a lot of O-line depth with Josh Jones and McCary. He goes out and signs a versatile swing tackle and Joseph Noteboom for cheap. He upgraded the backup quarterback by getting Cooper Rush, who started all year last year. Is probably the best backup quarterback we've had in a long time. He's on a cheap deal, 2-year deal, $6 million. And then DeAndre Hopkins for $5 million. We have all of those additions to the Ravens for a little under $20 million. That's a lot of depth and juice added to this roster for not that much. And yesterday really just knocked it out of the park. I think that's why I'm talking about it. The Jair Alexander addition to our free agent signings just makes it a tremendous offseason, man, especially for all of those guys to get a little under $20 million. I mean, Jair wanted around $20 million for 1 year from the Packers, and we get all of these guys for under $20 million. I mean, it's an incredible offseason, filled a ton of holes on this team. This isn't counting the draft either. You know, a ton of guys were added in the draft. And then there was a ton of work done taking care of their own guys. You know, we brought back Ronnie Stanley, who was about to hit unrestricted free agency and probably price himself out of Baltimore for sure. We got him extended. We brought back depth by re-signing Patrick Ricard, re-signing Tylan Wallace, re-signing Ben Cleveland, and then we extended some key guys like Derrick Henry and Rashad Bateman. The Ravens have knocked this offseason out of the park. I mean, honestly, if nothing else is done from here on out, I think it's an A offseason. You filled the majority of the needs in the draft and through free agency. You took care of the contract extensions that needed to get taken care of. We'll see what happens with Lamar. I know that's about to come too, so we could probably add that to the extension list, but I didn't want to do that right now because that hasn't happened. But I know that Lamar Jackson extension is coming. Lamar is not going anywhere. We're also going to end up seeing an Isaiah Likely extension, most likely. Tyler Linderbaum extension for sure. Next year, we'll see a Kyle Hamilton extension. So I see the Ravens continuing to take care of their own guys. That's not very surprising to me, but it's still an accomplishment to get that done. That Derrick Henry deal was a big deal to even bring him here last year, but then to also extend him and make him happy. We paid up a little bit just to give him fair value, and now he's going to have 1 or 2 more prime years in Baltimore, man, and that's super exciting. Rashad Bateman's here for the next 5 years, which is exciting because he's just now entering his prime. I really just think this is one of the best off seasons in recent memory. I think the Ravens went more aggressive than they usually do. They structured a lot of contracts with void years, which is straight out of the Eagles playbook. The Eagles have almost doubled the amount of void year money compared to any other team in the NFL, and the Ravens are pretty much adding void years to every contract, which, yes, does kick the can down the road and has a lot of dead cap money in the future. But if the salary cap keeps rising at the pace that it's rising, that will help offset that a lot. And then also you can just continue to do that. You know, you can structure the Lamar extension so that you save some more cap room. You could always extend Roquan Smith or Matabike and just move money around to clear as much room as you need and continue to keep this window open for the entirety of Lamar Jackson's career with the Baltimore Ravens, which I think is the most important thing, because who knows down the road, you know, where we're going to be. It's hard to usher in another Lamar Jackson. So I think we should be all in. You know, this is year 8. All right. It's time for a Super Bowl. And I love the aggressiveness this offseason, but also it's a balance still. You know, the Ravens haven't got too far away from their philosophy. They've been more aggressive, yes. Even in the draft, getting a guy like Mike Green, I think, is someone they could have passed on in previous years, but they're getting aggressive, you know. They're like, okay, let's go get this guy. This guy's too talented to still be there. Well, we've done our research. We can deal with the concern. So they're being aggressive, but also being smart and patient to make sure that they only attack when there's extreme value. You know, they didn't get Mike Green in the first round. They waited until he was still there at their second round pick, and they're like, look at this value. Like, this, we have to take him. And then in free agency, you know, you're getting a talent like DeAndre Hopkins at a good time where his price tag's not too high. You know, the Ravens have done this a lot with veteran receivers, but I do think DeAndre Hopkins is a little bit different than that. Also, the Jair Alexander, you know, you didn't go trade for Jair. You didn't go trade for a Jalen Ramsey. You waited until Jair was released, and you attacked with a value contract. He's coming off some injuries. They stayed patient and waited for a value opportunity to present itself, and then they went out and attacked it aggressively. I love the way that they handled this offseason. I don't think that they're finished either, but I definitely, don't see any game-changing signings happening, but we'll see. I just think that this roster is pretty complete. I'd be okay with adding some inside linebacker depth. I'd be okay with adding a veteran safety, and I'd definitely be okay with adding some more guard competition if they want to do that. I don't love that Fa'alele's not pushed. We don't really have a backup right guard pushing there. I know he's probably going to start, but been seeing Scherf's name popped around a lot, and I'd be totally for bringing on a vet like that just to push. If he ends up not winning the starting job or whatever, then that's fine. Let the best guy win. But I do love the competition, and I think that with Emory Jones being injured, we could use some more competition on the O-line, but I think it's pretty much set, man. The roster is pretty much set, and it's probably the most talented, stacked roster in Ravens history, at least on paper. But it's not just on paper, because we had an incredible team last year. We had an incredible team the year before that. It's not just on paper. There's proof that we've been very successful these last few years, and then having an off season like we just had, I think just really puts us over the top. So now it's just about going out there, executing, and getting the job done when it matters most. But that's it for today, guys. Let me know what you're thinking about everything. Appreciate you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. The Flock Rundown. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.